Okay guys, for today's video I wanted to do something that was requested by a few of my viewers. I had a request from a couple users to do a 458 SOCOM reloading practices video that included some of, some tips and tricks and some of the things I've learned over the years reloading for the 458 SOCOM, including some of the equipment that I've chosen to use and the pros and cons of different parts and whatnot. So let's go ahead and begin. So first I'd like to talk about some of the reloading equipment. After reading and studying on the forums, I decided to go with the redding dies. Now, on all the forums, everywhere I searched, especially on the 458 SOCOM forums, I noticed that one thing was consistent, and that was that everybody highly recommended the redding dies. It's kind of a known thing that if you want to not have any worries about if your dies are going to work fine or not, the redding dies always work. You're always safe buying the redding dies. Now, they do cost more, but I feel like that was worth it. And whenever people ask me what dies to buy, I always tell them I like to do the redding 458 SOCOM dies. Now let's just start with the dies from start to finish. To size my brass, I use the redding full length sizer. And you can't go wrong with the redding sizer die. It just works, it's smooth. I've heard of people getting stuck brass in the Lee dies, and some people have had issues with the Hornady dies, but you can never go wrong with the redding dies. So to size my brass, I use the redding dies. Now, as far as sizing your brass, I like to use the waxy lubes. And to do that, I use Hornady Unique Case Loop or Imperial Sizing Die Wax. And I've always had good luck with those with these larger bore cartridges like the 458 SOCOM or the 50 Beowulf. I just get some of the cheap Harbor Freight gloves and get some of the lube on the gloves and then rub the brass between my gloves using my gloves as a lube pad. And if I do that, it seems like it works really good. I've never gotten brass stuck when I use that lube. Now after I've used the redding sizing die and sized the brass, then I like to trim the brass to length, and I use my Gerard power trimmer to quickly trim, chamfer, and deburr the brass. After I've sized and trimmed, then the die I like to use is the Lee. Now this is a Lee Universal Expander die, but as you can see inside, that doesn't look like the Lee Universal Expander die piece. And NOE makes these expander pieces act in a similar way as the Lyman M dies. And what they do is they expand the necks and then they put a little tiny bit of flare at the top so that you can set the bullet on top to seat it. I found that if I use this combination of the Lee die with the NOE insert, I get less brass deformation as well as bullet deformation. And one of the benefits of using this Lee Universal Expander die with the NOE insert, or if you use the Lyman M die, is that your brass gets expanded nicely, and it does it enough so that you have the proper neck tension when you seat the bullet. To seat the bullets after I've sized them and expanded the case mouth and case neck, then I like to use just the redding die, the seating die. And what I like to do is you back the die all the way out and then you push the seating stem almost all the way down. And what that does is that allows you to seat the bullet without engaging the taper crimp portion of the seating die. The next die I like to use is the Lee Factory Crimp die. And I use this because I like to seat and crimp in two different steps. And I really like the way that the Lee Factory Crimp dies use like a collet style to squeeze the brass together. Take out that little tiny bit of flare at the top. It does a really good job, and I've had really good luck with it. So I really recommend using the Lee Factory Crimp die for crimping. So those are the die sets that I use. One of the tools that I found so worth the money is available from Tromix. It's tromix.com, and this is like the handiest tool for reloading the 458 SOCOM. So Tromix makes these slotted case gauges or ammo gauges so that you can put your ammo in the gauge and you can check to make sure that it fits in the chamber, and then it has that slotted portion right here, so you can troubleshoot anything if it doesn't chamber properly. So if you have too much flare still left on the case mouth, then it'll kind of engage that. And you can see that he actually uses this has rifling in it. He uses actual barrel pieces to create these slotted case gauges. That way you can see the rifling, and this acts pretty much like one of his chambers. This tool comes in really handy for troubleshooting ammo that won't chamber properly, and it's a nice little check to make sure that it does. But also, it's really helpful in determining your seating depth of your different bullets. Like here's my 500 grain cast bullet, and you can drop the bullet in by itself and you can see the seating depth. And I'll usually drop it in till it makes contact and then back it off a couple thousandths, and then I'm good. But it's super handy to help determine the bullet seating depth for new bullets that you have never loaded before. Here's 4 different loads I have right here. This one is the 600 grain Moab bullet, 354 grain bullet, and this is the 500 grain pointy bullet. I use this one for subs and this one for subs, and then this one is a 300 grain bullet. And it's just great to be able to drop these in. And check to make sure they fit. So this is totally worth the money, especially if you're developing new loads and you don't have seating depths determined yet. Now, as far as reloading powders go, I've had really good luck with IMR 4198, and I've also had some good luck with Accurate 1680 on some loads, and H110. Basically, with the 458 SOCOM, you're going to be using similar powders as the 300 Blackout. They're going to be your Magnum pistol powders, H110, Lil Gun, IMR 4198, Accurate 1680, 4227, and etc. Now, one thing that a lot of new people to the 458 SOCOM cartridge fail to realize is that the max pressure for the 458 SOCOM is just 35,000 psi. That's quite a bit less than the max pressure of, say, 5.56 and 300 Blackout and etc. All right, for a visual aid, I got a 5.56 bolt and a 458 SOCOM bolt. Now you can see the walls of the 5.56 bolt are much thicker on the bolt than on the 458 SOCOM. My 458 SOCOM is pretty dirty because I've been shooting a lot of it and suppressed and I haven't cleaned it yet. But you can look and see how thin that wall is, and that's due to the fatter rim, the wider rim of the 458 SOCOM. Now, when you're doing load development for the 458 SOCOM, the traditional pressure signs are not going to be something that you want to see at all. So if you see any of the traditional pressure signs like flattened primers, bent case rims, cartridge case base deformation, ejector or extractor swipes or marks, loose primer pockets, cratered primers, if you see any of these signs, you are way over the max pressure for the 458 SOCOM. You do not want to use these traditional pressure signs as a diagnostic tool to push the high-end limits pressure-wise for the 458 SOCOM. Another tool that I like to use is Quick Load. Now, Quick Load is some software. It's ballistic prediction software, and it's great for determining max and starting loads, and which is really important with the 458 SOCOM because you're dealing with a max pressure of 35,000 psi, which doesn't or shouldn't show any of the traditional pressure signs. I've also been asked several times, which mags do I prefer to use? And the answer to that is I actually really like using the GI mags, but they're a little bit harder on the brass than some of the hybrid polymer metal mags. And so I will use the aluminum GI mags, the steel mags, as well as the ones that seem to be universally good are the Lancer mags, and I think they're the Lancer L5 mags. And if you're using the really wide me-plat bullets, like traditionally made for the 4570, it helps to do a little moon cut in the front of the magazine. Projectile-wise, we're pretty lucky because there's so many manufacturers these days that the options are quite a bit more than when I first started loading for the 458 SOCOM. When I first started loading for the 458 SOCOM, you had the choices of using 4570 bullets, or you can make your own. There weren't any 458 SOCOM dedicated projectiles designed just for the 458 SOCOM. But now we're lucky because we have such a variety of manufacturers making the different bullet shapes and sizes, and also we have lots of bullet mold makers making a variety of options also. Nowadays you have options going from, like a 300 grain bullet all the way up to a 600 grain bullet, and I think maybe someone makes something bigger, but that'd be just crazy. There's lots of options these days to buy like a complete firearm or an upper or barrels or whatnot, and sometimes the quality is hit or miss depending on what chamber reamer is used. But I will say that if you go with a Tromix upper and or lower, you will never go wrong with it. He's been making 458 SOCOM uppers forever, and he's probably makes the best out there right now. If you want something that's guaranteed to work and made by someone who stands behind his product, Tromix is the best place to go. Now, you might have seen in some of my videos that I have, a couple different uppers. This one is made by Radical Firearms. My experiences with them have been hit or miss as far as quality goes. I must have lucked out because this 458 SOCOM upper, it's worked great for me and I have no regrets for buying it. But I've heard of other people who have had issues with theirs. This has eaten everything that I fed it, and it's not giving me any problems. This is my Excalibur barreled upper, and this barrel is very nice. I love this barrel. It's a 10 twist barrel, so it's got a faster twist than the traditional 14 twist barrels, but it works pretty good for stabilizing those extra long bullets, like those 600 grain Moab bullets. And I also have a Tromix upper, and it works great too. Now, if you're reloading, I've found that the best place to get brass is the Starline brass. StarlineBrass.com. And I've had really good luck with these, and I've actually shot these several times. I haven't kept track of how many, but the Starline brass is made very well, and I've not had any issues with it, and I've gotten several firings out of the brass. So I highly recommend Starline brass, even if someone else makes brass too.